Hello, everybody, and welcome to the One Fear Per Year podcast. I am really excited to dive in with our next guest because I just met her today. And if you're not watching this and you're just listening, she has the most adorable hat on and she just looks like sunshine incarnate. So, Brianna Greenspan, thank you for joining me today.
Aw, you're so sweet, and thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Well, let us dive right in because, as I was mentioning, these are bite sized episodes, just enough to throw some encouragement out there and maybe some tools and tricks that we've kind of learned throughout the years with dealing with fear. That could be a lifelong journey. So, I want to hear a little bit from you about how fear has shown up in your life. Let's start with most recently. Is there things in your life right now where fear's been an obstacle?
Wow. I've had so many bouts with fears over the years, and they've evolved in so many different ways. The fears and the limiting beliefs of various aspects of my life and work, and the ways that I'm interested in contributing in the world. And the truth is, my biggest fear is like this moment. This moment. For many, many years, I've lived with a complex chronic illness, and that was just like something about me. And for the last 17 years, I've been identifying different ways to support myself and others that have complex chronic illnesses. But that's not really something that I talked about publicly. It's just something that I was learning for myself, sharing with others who asked. And so, a fear that I'm overcoming in this exact second is really speaking to those aspects that are so invaluable, but we often are scared to talk about or share. And so I have been working on a book project for the last 5 years called The Book of Questions Living with Chronic Illness. And if you are familiar with the original Book of Questions, that was the New York Times bestseller in the 80s, I am co authoring a book with that original author. And when I think about fear, I think about this book because the intro we'd worked on for a while and it really said what I wanted it to say. And my colleague said, "You're not raw enough. What if you share a story of you giving up and you wanting to not live anymore?" And the first appreciative question that you asked yourself that was the catalyst for you not only wanting to live, but thriving for the last 17 years. And I said, "No, no, no, let's say anything but that." And he said, "What if you really let go of your fear of your own story?" Um, and I was like, "I have let go of the fear of my story. I've shared it in a few ways." And he said, "Not the whole story, not the real story. You've shared bits and pieces, but what if you were the rawest and most vulnerable that you've ever been? And it was a vehicle to help people who needed it in a deeper way and you could have imagined." And so we wrestled with that for a bit, and he lovingly convinced me to amend the intro to really share a powerful narrative of, the darkest day of my life and the sparked curiosity that came from that. That's led to me consistently finding new vantage points for strength and addressing new fears. So this is like my newest fear that I'm currently working through and kind
Ah,
of part of it.
I am so honored, first of all, for to have you here sharing that because what you've just said is kind of at the crux, I feel like, of all of this. Like, we try to pretend a lot and have everything together and the white picket fence, and we're perfect human beings. And it's just the reality is we are imperfect, we are messy. We have those moments on the bathroom floor curled up in the fetal position where we're just like, can tomorrow just not come, please? Because this is really rough. And I feel like it's in that space where we can encourage one another. Like what you just shared really, like I said, I'm just honored and grateful to open up this conversation in this way. We need more of Briannas in the world who can really dig deep and do it not only for themselves, but like you learned for other people in service to the world. And that is how we change things. So, as you were talking to him about this, what were some things that he either said or tools or even your own mindset shifts that helped you go from, you know what, I really don't want to do this. I don't want to share this part to, okay, I'm going to surrender and I'm going to share it.
Mhm. Oh my. Well, to answer that, I'll take a step back and say that on this, what I call like the illness to wellness journey, the last 17 years have really been a journey of me finding the tools and rituals and therapies and practices that I didn't have when I was younger that I wish I had. And so, what he said to me was really, how might you speak to the you that is 100% a no to this information that the you back then would have needed? And what narrative does the you back then need to hear to read this book, to open this tool, to ask these questions? And that was like very confronting and interesting and grappling because the me back then had such a dark, pessimistic, negative, um, mindless mindset. I was in a very depreciative, hopeless space for so many years. I'd lost the ability to walk. There were back braces, neck braces, hospitalizations, surgeries, doctors, pills, shots, so many assistive devices, limiting beliefs, medications, diagnoses, therapies, and no relief. And so he was saying, how might you get over this fear that you have in your rational brain today by addressing that avatar of you that you lived in for so many years? And what would that girl needed to have heard in order to pay attention to the information that you're claiming you want to help those type of people with? And that was kind of like a cracking open moment where I thought, I need to get uncomfortable in order to make others who need this information comfortable.
Ooh, wow. I met a gentleman who was talking about a platform that he used to have where people would go and they would share stories of their rock bottom moments, like those very vulnerable moments, right? Of falling on your face, something not going correctly. And they were not allowed to share the happy ending.
Mm,
Literally just talked about that messy middle part and expressed that. And I feel like so many times we will talk from a place of, I have now overcome. I am now here. Please come along. Whereas if it's more like, hey, the journey of life is a struggle at times, there are different seasons. So we may feel one way in one moment, and in the blink of an eye, something can change where we feel completely just destroyed, like you were saying, depressed. I can't get out of bed in the morning. And so I love that advice. And I love that you surrendered to it because don't you think there is that choice involved? I mean, obviously, you could have said no and you could have not shared from that vulnerable place.
well, funny you should mention that because I did say no of multiple times. I was like, no, thank you. I worked so hard on this intro. The intro hits all the points I want. I have evidence because I've shared it with other chronically ill people. And he really continued to hammer back the point that it what that that what I was saying was complete was not enough to be of service to the amount of people who are suffering each day. And so, sometimes you don't get over a fear or do something uncomfortable the first time you're asked or thrust into it. Like sometimes it does take some like poking or prodding or strong words or more in order for us to like really step into uncomfortable but meaningful spaces. So for me, it was definitely like a not the first or second time he asked, and then, eventually, and um now I'm really in awe because something that was like a dark and tragic stain on my lifelong journey has become memorialized in a meaningful way with a positive set of footprints. Not like, and here's the happy ending, but like and here's what I learned, and here's what I continue to use, and this is what's helped me the most, and here's some opportunities for you to go on your own exploration experience. So that was an ongoing, evolving process.
I like that you brought that up though too, because that going back to the perfectionism and this idea that, yeah, the first time when we know intuitively we need to do something and we don't, or we resist, or whatever, it's to part of the journey so that we also can empathize with other people who, in their own ways, are kind of stuck in whatever that might be. And I really love what you said because our mess becomes our message. I've heard speakers talk about that, and it's kind of true. If we don't dig into that mess, our message probably is a little watered down and not as valuable. So, yay for you. I'm so excited for people that, especially people that deal with chronic illness, because I can only imagine. I don't have that. I know several of my friends that have some autoimmune things going on, and it's rough. It's almost like, and it's this silent thing internal that how do you deal with that part? I'm just more curious with, if you have a broken bone and you have a big cast on or whatever, people see it and they can know. But if it's all internal, how do you deal with that?
There are not enough minutes in this podcast. It's so complex to have an invisible illness. That's what it's called. So like there are illnesses that are popularized and trendy, and it's very easy for someone to say, they have cancer. Everyone knows what's going on there. It's very easy for people to say certain things, and it's significantly more complex when there's a lot of variables. Like sometimes I see her and she's stronger, sometimes she's weaker, sometimes she looks like this, but sometimes she looks like this. Oh, did you gain some weight? Like, oh, did you that? And it's like people don't actually understand what it is like to be someone who has an invisible complex chronic illness. And what that means is that there's an ever evolving roller coaster of symptoms at different levels. So you may have a level 4 symptom in your foot and a level 8 symptom on your skin and a level 2 symptom in your eyes at the exact same time. And you're trying to identify what thing needs prioritization if possible, because there's a lot of things going on, overlapping regularly. So every minute to minute or hour to hour is evolving based on a variety of factors that are ever changing. So that's not like it's like I can predict in this and next Tuesday this is going to happen and I'm going to this. So there's a lot of unknowns for the individual experiencing it, and there's even more unknowns for those on the outside. And there's a lack of communication in that space. And what's interesting is that most patients feel unseen and unheard. They don't have a lot of psychological safety because they're not well received by people who just can't understand what they go through, because it's a really nuanced and complex situation. There are amazing stories like the spoon theory that explains what units of energy are and how many units of energy someone with a chronic illness uses on the same thing that might be a breeze for you. So there are ways that people could theoretically relate, but it is very complex. And actually, to get back to the fear conversation and like the journey of the fear conversation, before writing the book of questions, Living with Chronic Illness, I'd written a lot of other books and they were not in the chronic illness space. Again, trying to hide this aspect. And I had all these other passions and things I wanted to do, and things I wanted to like be of service within. And one day, um, my agent asked, "Hey, we'd like to acquire the rights to share your resilience within chronic illness story for elementary and middle school kids, explaining what an invisible illness is, explaining it what it's like to miss a lot of school and need to play catch up. How do you advocate for rare diseases? How do you strengthen your mindset if you have a rare disease? Like, how do you create rituals and habits in your day that help set you up for success? How do you advocate for yourself? And all of those things were core competencies that I lacked as a child. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know what an invisible illness is or how to explain it to others. I didn't know how to be my own activist or advocate. I didn't really understand what was needed for myself or what was needed to explain to others. And so, explaining what an invisible illness is, explaining to kids who miss a lot of school, how do you catch up? How do you advocate for yourself? How you raise awareness for rare disease, all of these different topics was kind of like a dream come true and also the most fear inducing experience of my entire life. And I always say, I wouldn't have been capable. Like, I worked on that project for 3 years because I'm very nitpicky and I wanted all the words to be accurate. And I wanted to meet students where they're at, both from a patient and a friend perspective. Because if you're in a fourth grade class, like what we used to know as like 1 in 10 people have a chronic illness, now it's significantly larger, especially if there's a mental health aspect. And so when we think about fear, I had to get out of my own way and let go of the massive fear that I had surrounding sharing my story in this vulnerable way when it was going to be memorialized for elementary and middle school children. And I always say that had I not done that, I would have forever been a no to this request with my other colleague, Dr. Stock. And so sometimes in the fear unlocking game, one thing may lead to another thing, may lead to another thing, and you may let go of one fear here, but then you see it resurfaces again and again and again in different ways. And so my letting go of fear surrounding what I experience journey has been multifaceted, and I feel like it's that way for most people. Like, you overcome one fear and then you see another and another. So, um,
Absolutely. If you were to, and there's no right or wrong answer to this, it's just everybody's opinions. I ask everybody, what is the opposite word of fear for you? So if you could think of an exact opposite word, what would that be for you?
I'm confused. I'm confused. I had a coach once that used to say fear and excitement are chemically the same thing in your brain. So my first word was like excitement, but I was like, is that the opposite in my mind or is that just the scientific opposite?
And
um,
what do you think? Just in your own,
yes.
just as you think about fear and what
Opposite
that
of fear.
feels like to
The
you.
the opposite of fear is opportunity. The opposite of fear is letting go of your fears. And what does letting go of your fears create? It creates new opportunities that you'd built a wall between you and those opportunities. The opposite of fear is opportunity.
Oh, that's really good. So if we're trapped by our fear and stuck by our fear, we're behind this wall. Whereas when we leap over that fear, here's all these opportunities over here that if we let our fear control us, we're never going to experience. So I love that answer. That's amazing. Such a good answer. And you are so lovely. Our time has ended, but I just want to encourage everybody to walk through fear, to be encouraged. The way that you've shown up today has given me a lot of inspiration and hope and encouragement. And I know it can't be easy living with a chronic illness at all. And so to live with that and then on top of that want to serve and be as vulnerable and open as you can about your situation to help other people is just, you're a superstar and a queen in my book. So thank you for joining me, and everybody go out there and do one thing, just one thing that moves you a little bit closer to stepping over that wall and into new opportunities.